Kicking it with Kay and Clay. 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 Hey everybody, thank you again for tuning in to Kicking It with Kay and Clay. Of course, I'm your girl Kay Marie, and I appreciate everyone that is either listening to this episode or you're watching this episode. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone, and thank you for the support that you guys show us and on the social media platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook. Thank you guys so much. We really do appreciate it. So, this is Center Stage. You guys all know Center Stage is our monthly segment where it's like an artist spotlight, and we showcase artists of all types. So, today we have an author on today. And I was just going through my grid, on Instagram, and I saw the title of this book. I said, that is interesting. It was someone else who posted her book. So I actually went to her page and I, reached out to see if I can, set up an interview and if she would like to be on Center Stage. And she said yes. And this is how this interview came about. So you're in for a treat. Okay. So our next guest holds a Ph.D. in communications from Rutgers University with an emphasis on marginalizational communication and its impact on marginalized groups. Excuse me. She is the host of her own podcast, Fresh Out the Cocoon. And as I mentioned before, she has a book. She's a brand new author, and her book is available. It's available now. So once we talk about it, you'll be able to go and purchase her book. And her book is called Fat Girls in Black Bodies, right? So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Joy Cox. Hi, Joy. How are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on and agreeing. Again, like I was saying, I was just, going through my grid on Instagram, and I forgot who one of my people that I follow, and she follows me. She posted your book, and I was like, wait a minute, this sounds interesting. So I have got to see this author and get her on the show because I am very intrigued. So before we get into the book a bit, let's just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where do you reside?
Yeah, so I currently reside in northern New Jersey. I did my PhD at Rutgers, which it would be considered Central Jersey and New Brunswick. And then after that, I relocated near Newark because I wanted to be involved in the community. And I had my eye on Newark for a few years while I was studying. And I figured that, if I wanted to make an impact or make a change, that was probably the place I needed to be. And so I made plans and I took the leap soon after I was dubbed doctor. I was like, deuces, I'm out. And that's where I landed.
Okay. New Jersey. How is that? Where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right? So everything's like a bridge away.
Right.
I'm about an hour and a half from there, but I grew up on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, in a small town called Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And most people know about Johnstown because we're famous for floods. There were some big floods that happened that kind of wiped out the city on several different occasions. And so when they talk about Johnstown, that's typically what they talk about. Johnstown is also known for the steel mills. And so I grew up there primarily. My mom moved me and my sisters out there when we were younger. And so since then, I've kind of bounced around a little bit. I did my undergrad in West Virginia, did my master's in Missouri. And then I was like, I got to come back to the East Coast. So that's when I decided to do my PhD.
You love the East Coast, huh?
Yeah. I mean, you got to, I feel like you take your trade-offs because the East Coast is like, there's a vibe. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I know it's not in the Midwest. Okay. That's for sure.
I'm in the Midwest.
I love the mill. I mean, I have
Yeah.
fun. I had fun in Columbia. I was right outside of St. Louis, about 2 hours away. And it was interesting because I had Kansas City on one side of me and I had St. Louis on the other. And I felt like St. Louis was more East Coast and Kansas
Mm,
City was more West. So I would go to St. Louis when I wanted to kind of feel like home,
okay.
away from home. Yeah.
Okay. No, I feel you. The East Coast, it is a vibe, and I've said this a couple of times. Even though I'm from Michigan, born in Detroit,
Mm,
half raised in San Diego, California,
okay.
and then back to Detroit. So you know, so I had like that West Coast flavor too. But I've said that if I could pick a state to live in, even though I won't because I'm just like over the snow, it would be New York. I
Oh,
like
yeah.
that whole vibe. Hmm.
Okay. But
Yeah.
that's interesting. I mean, people always ask me about New York. I mean, where I live right now, I'm roughly 20-25 minutes outside of the city.
Okay.
So it's easy for me to hop there and hop back. And
Right.
that's pretty much what I do. Like I'm in the city and I'm like, okay, like y'all are over the top. Like somebody turn these lights down. It's bright, like, and it's gonna stay that way, you know.
All the time.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
like I mean, I do think that the boroughs have their own niche and their own personalities, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, I really do enjoy being like on the East Coast and being this close to everything. The only thing that the biggest drawback I think being on the East Coast, especially in these spaces, is the price of living.
Yeah.
You know what you pay
Yeah.
for a one bedroom. I mean, I heard my heart break when I moved back here from Missouri, and they told me how much it
Yeah.
cost for a one bedroom apartment when I was living in like a 3 bedroom house.
Hmm.
Yeah, it hurt me in ways that I had never been hurt before. Um, but
Yeah.
oddly enough, like when it was all said and done, I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna stay here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't want to move back, like, you know, back across the country. I didn't want to go to the Midwest. And I've been to the West Coast too, but there hasn't been like a place that I think really captures
Spoke to
everything.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm looking for, like the East Coast does.
Okay. All right. East Coast. So
Yeah.
were you happy that your home state turned blue?
Yes. I mean, okay, like can we shout out Philly just for a second?
Yes.
You know, I was stressed out. I mean, I stopped watching after the first night. I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? Y'all gonna count these votes, and it is what it is. But
Mhm.
I'm not finna stroke out over this. So, I just didn't watch. And then as they counted, you know, first I think it was like all the focus was on Georgia,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is just too much. This is like, you know, I don't know if you're into sports, but I
Mhm.
watch like basketball and I
Mhm.
like the Premier League. And like, it almost felt like the last 10 seconds of overtime every day
Mm.
I woke up. And I was like,
Mm.
I can't do these last minute plays. Like, this is too much. And then my sisters, they were sending me like updates on the counts. And then people started saying like in Pennsylvania, like they're edging out, and
Mhm.
you know, and then all the shout outs came to Philly, and I was like, I love y'all so much.
Right.
So
Yes.
much.
Philly representing. That's how we was feeling here in Michigan too.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, Detroit showed up.
Yes.
I'm like, Philly, Detroit, Atlanta showed up. Okay.
Hmm.
Up and out. Thank God.
Yes. Yes. Because I could not do
No.
another
I
4 years. I cannot.
and I hate to think what he's going to do when he's not in office. I shudder to think, but you know what? We're gonna keep it happy. We're
Yeah.
gonna keep it happy.
Right. Right.
I don't want to go there tonight.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so come on, fat girls and black bodies. How did you come
Hmm.
up with that? What inspired you to write this book?
So one, I am a fat girl in a black body. I have been a fat girl in a black body my whole life. And I think that one, so there's a number of reasons I think why I finally sat down and was like, let me write this. One of the reasons, probably maybe the most like work smarter, not harder reasons,
Mhm.
is that usually when you write your dissertation for your PhD, right, which is like the big report that helps
Mhm.
you get your degree, afterwards, what people typically do is that they parse out pieces of their dissertation to become articles for different
Yeah.
academic journals,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, if I wrote a book, I wouldn't have to do none of that. Just throw it all in one book and then you're done. So I was like, hey, this sounds like a great idea. So that was that was one of the
Okay.
driving forces,
I
right?
like
Like
that. I like
I
that.
didn't want to parse out because I think too, when you are working on a project, you do see it as like one whole piece, right? Like it's a story. And some people are only interested in certain chapters, and that's how you kind of get the articles, right? And I was like, no, like you really don't get you don't really get everything without understanding the story.
Mhm.
So I was like, it's better to write a book and not to have a parse it out. I think another thing that's important is because there's a lot of talk right now when we talk about civil rights, when we talk about human rights, when we talk about the impacts of white supremacy and what that looks
Yeah.
like, in our society. And oftentimes this gets left out. We don't address this. As a collective, Black people, I think we are accustomed to questioning almost everything, right? But when we start to talk about the things that really hold a sense of status and worth in our communities and in other communities, those things get a lot easier. They're a lot easier to be brushed under the carpet.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think that this is a topic that's important. People are dying because of this
Mhm.
regularly. And then, you think about the generation that's going to come after you that will 9 times out of 10 live through what you lived through if you don't speak up and say something. And so fat Black girls or fat girls in Black bodies is kind of is a tribute to the generations that are coming up, right? I'm happy to say that I survived through a lot of the experiences in my life, whereas I've seen other people that did not.
Mhm.
And I think that it's important to point out the ways that as a community, we could really come together and heal one another as opposed to using the same vices or using the same tools that we see on the outside, right? Albeit healthism and
Mhm.
white supremacy and what we say fitness is and what we say health is, instead of using them against each other because it
Mhm.
doesn't benefit us, and it definitely doesn't help our kids.
Right.
And so me writing is really for other people, I think, in some ways. I mean, it was cathartic for me, but
Mhm.
really just a way to say, okay, this is my platform. This is what I want to say. And I know that people will kind of listen to me because I have those letters behind my name, and they'll be a little less likely to ask questions and drill me as though I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not that I can't defend those things,
Right.
right? But there is a sense of weight that comes with that. And I wanted to be able to use my platform and do something that I know would kind of move and shake things.
Okay, so you mentioned that you had your own experiences. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah. So, so where do you start, right? Like, I mean, I think so. My dad was one of the first people, and I kind of write about this in a book. My dad was one of the first people that kind of signaled to me that my body was not the same as everyone else's, and it was in a subtle way. I don't think that he necessarily meant to be nasty or mean or rude, but
Mhm.
my dad used to do this, I don't know, airplane thing. So my dad was
Yeah.
about 6 feet tall, right? And when you're a kid and you're like 4 feet tall, 6 feet tall is everything. So, we used to line up and he would lift us up and he would bring us back down. Like that was the ride. There was no
Yeah.
swoops, there were no swirls.
Right.
It was just up and down, right?
Mhm.
And it was the best thing ever. And so the one time he came, we're all standing in line, getting ready to get lifted up and get, put back down. And as he lifted me up and he put me back down, he said, your dad's not going to be able to keep doing this with you.
Mm.
And I remember as a kid being like, well, what? In my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, well, why not? And then I started looking around and he's lifting my youngest sister and putting her down. He's lifting my older sister, putting her down. He's never saying those things to them.
Mm.
Right. And so on some level, you start to think about yourself. You're internalizing, well, what is it about me that he can't keep lifting me
Yeah.
up and down? And then as you get older, people start filling in those pieces for you. Right. And whether it was family members, I had a family member tell me that my legs look like tree trunks. That was something that was hard to get over. I think as even, just being grown, um, that your legs are not tree trunks, right? But that doesn't erase the image, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you're standing in front of the mirror and you got to get dressed and you're hoping that
Mm-hmm.
you look nice. That's what you see. You see
Yeah.
big stumps of leg and you're like, how am I going to wear whatever? Or this, I won't wear this because of this reason. And so I carried around a lot of those internalized things for years, and that was just like the things that I was dealing with, like with my family. People asking me questions. I had one year they tried to put me in summer camp, summer camp because they thought I wasn't active enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So were you like the only one in your family, like from your immediate family?
Yeah. So, which was also interesting. So, like I said, I
Mm.
have two sisters, right? And they both grew up fairly thin. I had an aunt who was heavy, right? So she lived in a larger body, but she wasn't a kid.
Yeah.
And a lot of the confidence that I seen in her was something that I carried around as hope for myself growing up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, like, that was kind of the thing that kind of helped to combat when people like blatantly said things about me, right? So it was like, no, because remember, and my aunt's name was Pearl, and she was like the coolest aunt ever, and she wouldn't let us call her aunt because she thought that she was too young for that. So we walked around calling her Pearl, right? And so but she would, they would say things, and I'm like, no, because Pearl would dress up, so you could find clothes that are nice because Pearl would
Mm-hmm.
dress up, and you knew you could have fun and you could party because that's what Pearl was doing. And so I kind of used that as leverage, inward hope to kind of
Mm-hmm.
push myself forward instead of like, shrinking in despair when people would
Right.
say things. And then aside from that, I mean, going to the doctor's office and different things like that, there was a lot of advocating that I had to do for myself. Because when my mom, she didn't live in a larger body either. So, you're sitting in a doctor's office and doctors are saying certain things about your child, whereas she doesn't see the offense in it because
Mm.
right? Like you're not
Yeah.
living this reality.
Yeah.
And I remember being 16, I had to get my gallbladder out. Well, I don't know. To this day, I still don't know if I had to get it out, but this is what they decided to do.
Okay.
And when they decided on the procedure, the doctor told me to stop eating so much fried chicken.
Mm.
And I remember being livid, right? 16, I was pissed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why would he say something like that? Why does he think that I eat fried chicken?
Right.
Like, where did that come from?
Right.
And I remember sitting down and telling my family about it, and I remember them chuckling,
Wow.
right? And telling me like it wasn't that big of a deal.
Mm.
And so I think that, kind of standing on this island by your own, having experienced the things that you've experienced, wasn't easy. Wasn't easy for me. Obviously you get passed up. You're not, I've know what it's like to be the third wheel friend. I know what it's like to be considered the strong friend. I also know what it's like to be considered the mammy friend, right? So I'm the
Mm-hmm.
friend that everybody can kind of dump their issues on, and
Right.
it's supposed to be my responsibility to take care of them. And I do have a caring heart, and like learning how to balance that over time
Mhm.
has also been something that's been important to me.
Okay.
But then also understanding that it's not my obligation to take care of you,
Right.
which oftentimes is something that gets put on people who live in larger bodies because we ain't got nothing else better to do, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't got no love. You don't have a love life. People ain't knocking down your door. Like surely you can do
Oh, you
these
can listen to
things.
my problem. You ain't doing
Right.
nothing else.
You could do these
Wow.
domesticated things. Why don't you cook me something, bake me something, make me feel good? That sort of
Wow.
thing. Because that's kind of where your that's the vision, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, that's where your life lies. And if and I mean, I think we see that replicated in TV and we see that in
Yeah.
movies, right? Like, what does Big Mama
Yeah.
look like, right? And Big Mama is a certain depiction of a type of individual, a type of Black woman. And Big Mama typically never had a life prior to, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't like running the streets or living her life fabulously and then she became Big Mama. No, it almost seems like Big Mama has always been
Right. She
Big
was
Mama,
born and she was a big
right?
mama. Right.
It's like,
Wow.
so we get conditioned to think those ways and to believe those things. And yeah, I'm just like, well, shoot, I want to do something different, right? Having all these accolades and stuff, I think it's always interesting to still see people's eyes shift when I say, no, this is what I study, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm studying, I'm studying health and I'm studying weight within the context of racism, and particularly in the context of identities that are stigmatized, which include fat individuals.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, that, y'all, that. So,
Wow, girl, you said, oof. It's just amazing how, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, whether they're in a larger body or not. Everyone can relate to, well, not everyone, but a lot of people can relate to, being that person in the family that people talk about, or other people talk about. So this is very when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, I can't. People, they're just so mean.
mm-hmm.
It's just so mean. Because we all been picked on, as kids and stuff like that. And people think like, oh, that's just kids stuff, blah 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 blah. Words don't hurt. Words do hurt.
Yeah, yeah,
They carry power.
right, right. And I mean, even to add to that, the behaviors that you see, research would suggest that
Mm-hmm.
young girls are more likely to have eating disorders when they watch their moms don't do behaviors that show that they dislike their bodies, right?
Mm.
So here you are, a parent standing in front of the mirror, like sighing and grabbing grabbing your
Mhm.
rolls and your pouches, and you are saying, yeah, but I never told my daughter that her body wasn't okay, but she saw you do that, right? And she internalizes that and she
Yeah.
believes that this is not the way bodies are supposed to be. So as her body starts to develop and she gets those same rolls and pouches, she tries to stop that process, right?
Mm.
And that's why I say that this is like a community issue, right? This is a
Yeah.
community thing that, the things that my mom or my dad or my aunts, uncles, cousins, whomever have said to me, it just doesn't stay with me, right?
Yeah.
It impacts how I live. It impacts how I carry myself, how I see them behave, right? The ways that I see them have conversations about people whose bodies look like mine.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe your family never came to you and was like, "Ooh, girl, you are a hot mess." Right. You look a mess. But I watched you make fun of everybody else's body who looked
Right.
just like my body.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to make conclusions about that. And as a community, like, we don't have to live that way. I mean, yeah, white supremacy is all around us, but that don't mean
Yeah.
that we have to bring it in.
Right.
Side, right? That
Right.
don't mean
We
that
have
we have to
enough
treat each other.
problems.
Exactly.
We have enough problems with other people trying to suppress and come down on us to do it, like you said, internally.
Right.
Mm.
Like, let's lift that burden, right? Let's give
Yeah.
one another the freedom to live and to be. I mean, I know that there are a lot of things out there that say that, like, diet culture is ripe, as far as, why people think that people's bodies become large,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's also this thing of genetics. I mean, you talked
Mm-hmm.
earlier about, like, was I the only larger one in my family, right? So the family of 4, yes, right? But if I were to look on my dad's side, all my aunts is fat,
Okay.
every last one of them, right? I have a fat aunt, right? And so we all eat the same stuff. We're all moving the same way. And then you got some fat bodies. I'm 5'4.5". My sister is 5'10". I have another sister
Oh
that's
wow.
5'9". I'm like, where did my height go? Right? Like, you got something extra, right? You
Yeah.
got some, I got, and me and my older sister, we had a conversation because she really asked me a question once, and she was like, do you think you could have done something to change, like, the outcome of how
Mm.
your body is? And I told her, I said, when puberty hit, you grew up. I grew out. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't ask for my hips to protrude the way that they did. They just kind of went that way,
Yeah.
right? Like, I was round for years. And then I hit puberty, like my waist went in, my hips went out, and I didn't have no say over that.
No.
The same way you
Yeah.
don't have no say over your height. It just
Yeah.
kind of happens that way. But there is this running idea that we can stop certain processes. We can stop the way that our body uh, get larger, right? Nobody's touching the issue about whether you're tall or not, because that's not something that that we have learned over time that has a certain that has power attached to it,
Okay.
right? Like, as it relates to men, yeah, like you be like, okay, this guy is short. You're not as attractive if you're short, whatever.
Yeah.
And I believe that, if we, there are procedures that help men to be taller, people be taller. But if that was widely accepted, I think that there would probably be more men opting to do that.
Yeah.
But because weight is like one of those things that help to determine status, especially among women, the majority of what you see is sold to them. Right. I don't know if I'm breaking people's heart by telling them that waist trainers don't work, but waist trainers don't.
Girl. Girl.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, y'all. But waist trainers don't work. If you see something that says
No.
that you can lose 2 inches off of your waist by the end of the week, I don't know how to tell you that, when you set out to lose weight, you don't get to decide where the weight comes off at. There's
Girl,
no such thing as that.
wouldn't that be nice? Girl,
I
and
mean,
that plus, and the waist trainers. I mean, to me, I mean, I used to work out with one. I'm like, I had to do my own research. I'm like, this ain't doing that. But 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 people wear it to hide their roles. Hide this. They're being that's kind of deceitful.
I mean, but so is Spanx.
Yeah, so I'm talking. Yeah, that's in the same line. Yeah,
and what I try to stress, I think too, because as somebody who sews clothes, I would like people to understand this thing, that clothes really, okay, so first of all, sewing, all of that stuff is a work of art, right? It's really about imagery more than it is about, hey, this is what my body looks like underneath. So when you construct the dress, you're sewing it in a way that it develops almost a shape of its own.
Okay.
Where we've come in society right now is that shape of its own is depicted by whatever is underneath you. But like, if you look at clothes that were made, in the Victorian period, those clothes stayed the way that they were by themselves. There were petticoats underneath that kind of helped the skirts come out, because it was about an image.
Yeah,
right?
It was
about a certain look. And so people who kind of get hung up on this idea of like Spanx, because everything is supposed to be smooth, this, that, and the other, really, in some ways, if you're not creating the shape that the garment was designed to be in, right? Like, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of irrelevant. But again, when we kind of go back to power structures and we go back to social status, we're living in a time where the artist doesn't have to do as much work, right? They're literally putting together something sheer and then be like, put your body underneath. Let's see how this goes.
Right.
Right. Like, let me just see, we want to give an illusion that you're naked underneath, but you're not really naked, because gotcha, you're wearing a bodysuit, and people are, cringing inwardly because they don't want people to see what their naked body looks like under, they don't want people to see that silhouette, because this idea is that, there are so many Beyonce, everybody should have a body like Beyonce. When the truth of the matter is that everybody doesn't have a body like Beyonce. No. Everybody doesn't have the resources like Beyonce.
Right. Right.
We don't know what Beyonce is doing with her body. Right. So Beyonce, and I'm not saying this is what she's doing. This is not tea. Right. But Beyonce could be showing us every day that she's working out and she patting her with a towel or whatever. And then she could be going to get procedures done. Yeah. We wouldn't know. Right. So imagine you working out 6 hours a day talking about you trying to get like Beyonce, and what Beyonce got can't be accomplished. Right. And what it is that you're doing. And that's what diet culture does. It sells us a bunch of pictures. It's like, yeah, You can be like this. You can, and it simultaneously trains us and conditions us to hate our own
Yeah.
body. I
Yeah.
don't want to look at this every day. I want it to change. And if I do a slim fast, or if I do a Mediterranean diet, if I do a keto diet, then I'm going to be smaller. And what does that get you? Well, it gets you the things that diet culture supposedly says you're supposed to have, right? So it gets you the looks, it gets you the attention,
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to get you the success. But when I started to realize that I had already accomplished a lot of those things in the fat body that I had, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, wait a minute, hold up. Wait a minute.
Like
So
time out.
you mean to tell me I'm not supposed to have no ribs, no chicken, well, at least not so that it tastes good. No ribs, no chicken, right? No ice cream, none of this stuff, so that I can get the partner,
Get likes
get the
on
house, yeah,
Instagram.
get the likes, get the attention. Well, what happens if you already have all of those things?
Mm,
So then what value do you see in yourself?
mm,
Right? And those were the types of questions that I started asking myself about me, which helped me to come to the conclusion that, it's not it's not worth it. I cannot look forward 15 years from now and imagine me still being like, "Ooh, I got to get this weight off."
yeah.
Like, you've been at this job longer, like you should be able to file for retirement by now, like something, right? It's just that you are constantly driving yourself through these cycles. And for what? Sometimes I think that's the big question we need to ask ourselves. For what? Why are we
Yeah.
doing this? Why is it important? Why does it matter? And it's okay for you to be honest with yourself and say, because I want the likes,
Yeah.
because I want to be seen as desirable because of all of those things, right? But then that deals with your core, right?
Yeah.
That deals with who you are internally as a person. Don't pop out of that and then point fingers at me and tell me I'm being unhealthy. Don't pop out of that and then point fingers at me and then tell me, I don't care about, I'm glorifying obesity and all of these other things.
Yeah.
No, just say that you
Right.
do what you do for the likes and the attention. Like, it's okay.
Right. People can be so nasty because I remember who was that? Ashley Graham, the model Ashley Graham. She plus size model, beautiful. Comfortable in her own skin, and it's exude confidence. But yet, I remember when she was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, people were saying that, oh, you're just glorifying, obesity or unhealthy. Like, how she's not healthy?
Right. Exactly. Right. If
And
I could tell you how many fat vegetarians I know,
girl,
right? How many fat vegans I know, right? If we are going to determine health simply by what people are putting in their bodies, then a lot of small body people got a problem,
yep,
right? But
yep,
we're not measuring that. And the ironic thing about Ashley Graham is that she was like a size 12.
right. And
Like,
which is normal, which is like the average. Is it 12 or 14 now? But anyway,
14.
it's 14 now. No, that's average.
Child, listen, if Ashley Graham is glorifying obesity, well, my size, I'm like, okay, sure, whatever.
But do
Right?
you,
This Go
but
ahead.
do you think it's like? I mean, I know we have a long way to go, but do you think that it's kind of people kind of coming around a little bit at, like, you have your Jill Scotts that's like, look, like I said, you have your plus size celebrities, icons, and people are a little bit are trying to come around a little bit. And for people that's doing all this talking, like some of them, they really think that, oh well, I'm just concerned about your health. Because I do know people who are in, big bodies and who are not healthy. I mean, it's like you really you have to do something about that. I mean, it's like beyond, like morbid obesity, like morbid. I'm not gonna say because I don't want to call them out, but But yeah, so in those type of instances, like, yeah, it's like, come on, that's, get healthy. But if you, like you said, if it's just genetics, what?
Well, and I think that there seems to be, okay, so I think that there seems to be a misconception around the idea or the percentage, right, of you eating and being physically. So how much of weight gain, all of that stuff is in your control, and how
Mhm.
much it changes your health outcomes. And so imagine if you're fat, everything, if you're fat, weight loss is at the top of the list for reducing, quote unquote,
Yeah,
reducing harm as it
yeah,
relates to your outcomes. That's problematic. I'm going
okay,
to tell you why. One, because 95% of diets fail. That
yes,
means that the majority of us who start to eat, quote unquote, healthy,
hmm,
right? Your body actually signals to itself, because you cut your calories, that it's starving. So your
yeah,
body actively works to make sure that it holds on to the fat that you have, because your body doesn't understand trends. It's trying to keep you alive, right? And so what winds up happening, the number one predictor of weight gain, right, is the attempt at weight loss. So your body is constantly boomeranging every time you try to go on a diet and you try to lose weight.
hmm,
Within 2 years, your body not only is keeping what you have, but it's putting more on,
yeah,
because you're literally messing internally with the way that your body is handling itself. And so why does that become problematic when fat people visit the doctor? One, because there's a good probability that if we take the doctor's advice, we're going to wind up fatter.
mm,
And two, right, even if we were to lose weight, there is no proven way that we know how to keep it off,
okay,
right? Because your body is constantly actively fighting to gain it back. And then, emotionally, psychologically, the toll that it takes on your body, right? So we haven't even talked about disorder eating, right? So not
right.
having an eating disorder, but what it means to like skip meal. Oh, I'm going out tonight. I need to fit in my dress. I'm not going to eat all day.
That do more damage.
Right. So
Yeah,
your body is like, bruh, what you doing? Right? Like, we need to eat, we need to
right,
function. You can't do stuff like that.
right.
But in your mind, you're like, no, this dress needs to fit a certain way. I'm going to
Mm,
have these Spanx, this, that, and the other. So the idea that people who are larger, like, oh, if you just ate differently, you could change your outcome.
okay.
Like, that's not always necessarily true.
Mhm.
It's not a given that people who are fat, like, so one of the things that get pushed a lot, like people who have type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
If you have type 2 diabetes, the first thing that people say is that, like, you need to lose weight. Well,
Hmm.
there's no guarantee that once you lose weight, your diabetes goes away,
Mm,
right? And so there's always this prescription the moment that you show up in a doctor's office, if you're fat, that you should lose weight. You should lose
yeah.
weight. You should lose weight. You should lose weight. And what a lot of people have started to do is say, okay, if I was in a smaller body, what would you tell me to do? Right? Because if I have type 2 diabetes and I'm in a smaller body, you're not going to tell me to lose weight. You're going to give me some other recommendations.
Mm,
You are.
yeah,
You as a
that's
healthcare
true.
professional, you're going to give me some other remedies.
Hmm.
But doctors sometimes can't see past the weight thing. Like,
Yeah,
give me
that's
something
true.
else. And I had to tell my doctor myself. I said, listen, I've been fat my whole life, right? Even your idea of me going to go visit the nutritionist. I told her, I said, there was a time when I was eating 12 to 1,500 calories a day,
Oh,
right? And I think I lost maybe 30 something pounds. Like, I've never, my adult life, I've never been under 250,
okay.
ever. Right. So, I was trying to explain to her, like, you got to understand that I can almost starve myself and this weight will go nowhere. So we're not talking about weight loss, not here, not now. I'm gonna need you to give me some other things, right? And then you get a plethora of other of
Right.
other options, right? Like, oh,
Mm.
well, if you got up and if you stretch, if you do this, if you do that, you'll probably feel better. Okay,
But
well, why
but
you
the
couldn't have
first thing
told
that
me
they
that?
go to
Right.
is what you eat.
Right, is what you eat because that's
Mm.
what we've been taught, right? So
Mhm.
when you see somebody that's super large, you're like, if they could just change what they eat, they'd be
Yeah.
better. There's no
And you know
guarantee.
what? I ain't gonna front. We a lot of us we all said it or thought it.
Mhm.
We have.
Listen, I've said it and I've thought it, right? I mean, I've said it and I've thought it. I've said it to myself, right? Like, Joy, you just need to stop. If
Yeah.
you just didn't eat as much, like put one less rib, if you just didn't do this, if you just didn't do that, if you just exercise the extra hour, you
Mm.
know, and then, I worked up the stamina to do it. I actually did it, right? So I
Okay.
started to eat less, right? Started to work out more.
Mhm.
And what I got from that, right,
Yeah,
was
what you get?
an emotionally damaged individual
Mm.
who was stuck in patterns of disordered eating with a fear that that little 30 pounds that it took for me to lose was
Gonna
going to
come
come
back.
back. And let
Mm.
me tell you something. It came back.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, when it came back, it bore 15 pounds of his
Yeah.
friend,
It had friends. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so there was a part of me and a point in my own life where I had to be okay with me,
Yes.
right? Because before you ask yourself, come on, if we was in a relationship, if this was like, for people that are, heterosexual, if this was a man who came in, swept you off your feet, made you feel good, then you was there for a while, you started getting super anxious and insecurity take over, like your heart is beating, you don't know when he coming home, all this other stuff. Like you ready to go back through that cycle again.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
ready to start second guessing yourself again. You want to know if he out there, if he doing whatever, this, that, and the third. You ready to go through that drama again? I had to ask myself that question. I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. There has to be a different way. And for me, that different way started with acceptance.
Okay.
Right. And
So
so
when did that acceptance come at in your life? At what point did that acceptance hit and stick?
so I'm new. I feel like I'm new to the game.
Okay.
Um, for me, I would say that acceptance hit about 2013.
Okay.
Right. Like I was just like, look, is your body, it is what it is. Like, and a lot of it dealt with, like people say, if you want to, this like a saying, like, if you're having a hard time following your diet or whatever, stand in front of the mirror naked, something to that degree.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Well, what I learned how to do is to stand in front of the mirror naked.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood in front of the mirror naked long enough that my body started to normalize in my own vision. Right.
Mm.
I think oftentimes, when you see something that you don't want to see, we have a tendency of looking away.
Yeah.
So you don't really know what you're looking at because you haven't spent much time. You just know that whatever you got a first glance of, you don't want to see it anymore. And what I noticed is that was some of the things that I was doing in the mirror. And so I started to stand in the mirror and look at myself. And then I was like, oh, snap, like those legs are not tree trunks.
Mm-hmm.
Those are actual legs, right? Like what role? Like these are roles everybody has. Like, and you start to, right. There's a certain, there's this normalization that came to me that like your body looks like everybody else's body. It's larger, yeah, but like you're not deformed, right? Like you're not a monster. You're not any of those things. Like it's not any of the things that you have heard over and over from other people. And it's not any of the things that you have told yourself, right? Like you're not undesirable. You're not any of those things. Child, I love my hips in ways that I don't think anybody else ever will. Right? I'm like, yes, hips. I'm sorry that they high five people when I walk past the aisle.
And people
right.
They're getting injections to get hips and butts and stuff. So
and it's like you start to, at least for me, I started to value myself and really be thankful for what my body does. In 2000, I think it's 2016, I had a PE, which is a pulmonary embolism, blood clots that come from your leg that travel up, get stuck in your lungs. And it gave me another appreciation for like honoring my body for what it does. Because what your body is purposed to do is to keep you alive. And I have been on years. I was on birth control, 2014, 2013, I first started taking flights, or I flew to Missouri for the first time ever. That's where I wound up doing my master's.
Mhm.
And I never thought like, oh, like blood clots could be an issue, right? For me, I was just like, I'm hopping on these planes. I got to go speak at conferences. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a couple blood clots laid me on my back as I was out collecting a rug that I found on Craigslist for free. You know, and it made me again kind of look differently at my body, that my body is not like just this trophy. It's not this thing, this pretty thing for everybody to kind of look at, right? Like there's so much more to us than that. And I was like, no, my body actually functions for me. And how can I be mad about that? Like, how can I be mad about the body that's keeping me alive? Can I imagine what it would have been like if I was like still stuck in that place, eating 1,200 calories a day, you know, not eating properly, practicing disorder eating, and then having a pulmonary embolism? Right? Like, would my body would have, you know, could my body have bounced back from that? I don't know, you know, but I'm grateful that I made a choice to say, no, buddy, you're going to eat 3 times a day if that's what you need to eat, you know, and you're not going to push yourself to a point of exhaustion, you know, because you feel like you need to work out and do all of these other things.
Just to please someone else.
Right, just to please people you don't know. People you've never met. I mean, you know, and half of the people will double tap you. They don't even leave a comment. You really working out? You really working out, you know, 12, 15 hours a week for people that don't even leave a comment? Like, something gotta give, you know. I gotta wake up with this body. I gotta go to sleep with this body. You know, this body keeps me warm. You know, when I get excited, you know, this body, my arms move and I'm jumping all over the place. You know, when I'm sad, this body is comforting to me. Right. And so I learned to look at my body outside of like just aesthetics. And it's not to say that I don't think, yeah. And it's not to say that I don't think that my body, you know, is cute. Because I just talked about my hips, you know, and I'm grateful for my cheekbones, right? And this bosom is something else. I mean, you know, I mean, it's a beautiful thing to kind of see what has happened, right? And I look at my aunts and I look at, you know, my mom and them, and I see that my body is like a product of them. I'm like, oh yeah, I seen those hips before. Wow, calves just like mine. It's like, would you look at that? And so yeah, there's a certain honor that goes with that I don't think that I had growing up, because you're not really taught that. You're kind of taught that you should change and be like everybody else,
conform.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you have a wonderful outlook, and like you said, you know, your body is supposed to, you know, work for you, keep you alive, you know, and not for someone else. Be comfortable in the skin that you're in. That was something that, you know, when I was in my old church, that was always stressed. Be comfortable in the skin that you're in. I mean, yes, you know, we all want to make some modifications. You know, that's natural. But do it for yourself. Don't do it because, you know, you want to please somebody else. You know, if they don't like you for who you are, then bump them. That's my attitude. Okay.
Listen, I think I probably have that attitude to a fault. Oh, you know what I mean? I'm good. Like, wait, Joy, wait. Like he's applied. He got to fly to play. I don't need no pilot fly to play. I'm good. Like,
Joy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely get it. You know, my advice to people is to dig and find out why. Because I think oftentimes, you know, when we start to dig and we really start to ask our questions, why we want things a certain way, why we want to be a certain way, we get to the answer that it's not about us at all. You know, it's really about you know, other people, or it's really about standards that have been set that really didn't have anything to do with us in the first place. And I think it's freeing when you can say, okay, well, this isn't really about me, so I don't have to.
Right.
You know, I don't really have to subscribe to this.
So this lastly, do you see okay, how can you, what I'm trying to say here? So I know, like, you're a researcher, So, and you did, a lot of research for your book, which is available everywhere, right? Is it, or is it
It's
on Amazon?
It's available everywhere. I
All
mean, people,
right.
yeah, you can Amazon it. You can. Girl, I walked in Barnes and Noble. My book was on the shelf. I okay,
Yes.
so I kind of tipped, but I didn't tip too much because I didn't want to fall. But yeah, so but yeah, it's I mean, and then also independent bookstores.
Okay. Yep. So, do you see it getting better? Our society, how we view this I don't even want to say issue, but do you see it getting better, and what can we do to make it better?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some peaks of sunlight
Mm-hmm.
in the darkness. I think that, one of the things that I think we can do is that we can remain consistent and steadfast in these spaces, right? Because having to visit doctors, and if everybody's saying the same thing to doctors, then I think it makes a difference, right? If parents are not judging their children, if all parents are not judging their children, right?
Yeah.
If parents are catching themselves in the
Yeah.
process of saying, hey, I said this earlier, but I didn't mean that, whatever, right? If they're rectifying those things, then I think long term, we can start to see those changes. I'm not asking everybody, I guess, to become a researcher like me and do those things, but I think there is a certain, dignity that people should have towards the humanity of others.
Yeah.
And, you know, you ask yourself if it matters, right? Like, do you have to comment on somebody's body in the grand scheme of things? Like, does it matter? It doesn't matter, does it? No. So don't do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go out of your way to say something about somebody's legs, thighs. There's actually a term, it's called fat talk, that women tend to do, and it's actually a form of bonding, right? Like, we got to break stuff like that where, I say, my arms are so big. And then you say, your arms are not big. Have you seen my arms? And then, you
Mm.
say, you jiggle, right? Like, women come out of that conversation actually feeling closer to each other.
Mm.
Right. Like, but there are other things that we can bond about. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
Right.
really? Like, I'm going to bond with you over jiggly arms. I don't want to do that. So I think, if we take those types of things out of our conversations, if we learn how to change the way that we talk about bodies, change the way that we talk about fat, change our view of like what fat is, right? Fat does not automatically equal death. Stop it,
Yeah. Or
right?
unhealthy.
Right. Or unhealthiness,
Yeah.
right? No more than being skinny does.
Yeah.
That doesn't render anybody to be healthy.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I think those are the things, small things that we can start to do interpersonally with one another that changes. But I think that there are small glimmers, right? We do see
Mm-hmm.
that there's kind of an extension of sizes that are happening in stores. Not saying that it's happening in very broad ways, but we do see, more stores offering extended sizes in clothing. We do see doctors that are also taking what's known as the health at every size approach, right? And so they are, dealing with their patients, not using weight as like that determining factor, and like their health outcomes and different things like that, because there's loads of research that was I mean, that's the other thing about society. I mean, to get kind of really to change, there's loads of research that speak to how weight loss isn't like that unicorn that we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't hear about it, and part of the reason why you don't hear about it is because of power structures, and the other part is because it's not popular.
Yeah.
Right? Like that thing that you've been betting on all your life, you should find out that it ain't real. It's like going to the whiz. Man, let me tell you something. When you find out that weight loss is Richard Pryor, you might blow something up. You see? So,
Wow.
it's sometimes it's easier to be like, yeah, no, the whiz is real. Just keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if diets were so effective, we wouldn't have to keep trying. You would have been successful in the first one that you did.
It's true.
But now you on number 38 and you blame yourself every time it doesn't work. Never questioning that maybe the problem is the diet and not you.
Right.
But you know, those things. I think there are things, right? I think that there are people who are standing, who are shouting, who are screaming, and as a result, light is peeking through. But really, interpersonally, I think small steps can make a big difference.
That's awesome. Yep. I agree. And like you say, you don't have to comment on just shut up. Just
Yeah,
keep your thoughts and comments to yourself.
shut your mouth. Your mom used to talk through her teeth.
Right.
Shut your mouth. Don't say anything.
Right.
Right? Like, yeah, just learn to let people. What I say, like, let me fat in peace. Right? Like, just let me live. You see me happy. You see me, having fun. Clap it up before you start
Right.
talking about, oh, you can't
Trying to
believe.
change you and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But fat people
Yeah.
supposed to be sad too. We're
Right.
supposed to be miserable and depressed. Like, we can't even have fun. We can't go out. We can't look nice, right? None of
Right.
that stuff. Like, we have to like reflect society's vision of what fat people should be. And that's a problem.
It is
You
a
won't catch
problem.
me there.
All right, you heard that. Thank you so much, Dr. Joy Cox. I said I was going to say doctor because she earned that degree. Okay.
You.
She worked hard for that. So, and if you guys want to reach out to her, you can reach her. You can hit her up on her Instagram. Her handle is at Fresh Out the Cocoon.
Mhm.
And she has her website, drjoycox.com. Just holler at her, let her know that you heard her on this podcast, and just shout her out and everything, and go buy the book.
Yeah, buy the book.
Go
Buy the
buy the
book.
book. Yeah, so it's a lot of information, and Dr. Cox knows what she speaks. And I thank you so much for just blessing us with your presence here on the show. I really enjoyed you.
Thank you for
Um,
having me. This has been great. Like,
oh,
one of the best
thank,
interviews I've had.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys, so again, so this just go hit her up, go buy her book, not just one copy too, make you give them out as
It's
gifts.
Christmas time.
It's Christmas. Give them out as gifts, okay? Thank you again, and thank you everybody for watching, for listening. However, you're doing it. And we are going to be back next week with another episode. It's going to be, good. And if I do say so myself. And so when you listen to this, if you're watching this, share it. Make sure you share it on your pages. Because we have to get, this word out and some good information, and people can look at themselves like I did today. I'm like, okay, yeah, I gotta stop saying that. I gotta stop doing that, and just be real, and just change, just change. So thank you everyone, and we are out. Okay, so thanks again, Dr. Joy.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, I will catch you next week. Peace. Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and Clay. Kicking it with Kay and